In the words of the guy from NBA Jam, the real estate market in Ottawa is heating up. And the CMHC finally calls it quits on an ill-fated first-time home buyer incentive program. And what does it all mean for you, the consumer? We've got answers coming right up in your March 2024 Ottawa Real Estate Market Update. Andrew, let's hit him with our new and improved theme song, and go. All right, we can cut that one. You know, I kind of like that one. Andrew, what do you think of that one? Pretty good. Best one yet. All right, let's jump right in. So I'm gonna start this the same way we always do, screwing around, and then when I'm done screwing around, which is right about now, I'm gonna walk you through the freehold sales stats for the month of February in Ottawa, Canada. Now, if you wanna just skip ahead to the condo stats or to my take on the CMHC canceling their first-time home buyer incentive program, please feel free. We've got the timestamps for each of those sections right in the video's description, okay? And if you wanna watch the whole thing, then hey, just sit right there. All right, let's jump in. Andrew, here we go. Let's get the freehold stats up on the screen now, please. All right, so, I don't know why I yelled there. So, in February, we sold a total of 762 freehold properties in Ottawa. And I will remind you that freehold homes means homes with no condo fees, right? You own the home and you own the land that the home sits on. So, 762 is a lot more than we sold last month. That would be January, the month that comes before February, where we sold 544 homes. And for those of you who don't feel like doing math, that's about a 40% jump in sales volume from January to February. Now, to see a big jump in sales volume from Jan to Feb, totally normal, right? Happens pretty much every single year, but 762 sales is also about 18% more than we sold in February of last year, 2023. All in all, 762 sales I'd say it's a very normal total for Ottawa in the month of February if we exclude the COVID years. In fact, in February 2019, we also sold exactly 762 homes in Ottawa. So we've kind of come full circle there in some ways, right? In other ways, the world is still burning, but hey, we'll leave the doom and gloom to the keyboard warriors on Reddit. Andrew, you like Reddit, right? Sometimes. All right, moving on. Andrew likes Reddit sometimes, for those of you who didn't catch that. All right, moving on. The average sale price of a freehold home in February was about 707,000 buckaroos. That's another word for dollars. 707,000, it's about 3.5% more than January, where the average sale price was about 682K. And it's right in line with February of last year, where the average price was at like 710,000. So less than 0.5% difference there. Now, unlike last year, where the average price went into the sevens and then came back down into the high 600s towards the end of the year, I do think we're going to stay above 700K all year moving forward, maybe forever. Forever. Yes, that is correct. Andrew, do you know where that song bite or that sound bite comes from? No. Oh God, Andrew never ceases to make me feel old. Andrew, have you ever heard of a band called Outkast? Okay, well, that was one of their big hits when I was in high school. It's called Sorry, Miss Jackson. All right, let's talk about inventory. Andrew, I know you know what that is. Inventory is? Supply. Andrew's been away too long. Inventory is a measure of both supply and demand all in one. And in the month of February, we saw a big drop in inventory. We started the month at 3.7 months of freehold inventory, and by the end of February, we were sitting on 2.9 months of total freehold inventory. So what that means is that for the month of February, demand outpaced supply in a pretty significant way. Now, if we continue to see healthy sales volume and we continue to see decreasing supply, Andrew, I'm gonna call on you again. What do you think that's gonna mean for prices? Andrew, hey, what's that? There you go. Andrew's reading off the teleprompter. Genius. All right. Yes, Andrew is correct. If we continue to see decreasing supply and strong sales volume, it will push prices up. And if that makes you upset, don't get mad at me. Andrew's the one who said it. All right. In all seriousness though, anytime you have more people looking to buy a thing then you have people looking to sell that same thing. The result is that that thing becomes more expensive, right? Common sense. All right, so moving on here, usual preemptive disclaimer, what I'm about to say is an oversimplification, but in a balanced market, you'd expect to see between 4 and 6 months of inventory. And so 2.9 months, which is where we're sitting now, puts us well into seller's market territory. I wouldn't say it's a crazy seller's market, but it's a pretty solid seller's market. So moving on, homes that sold in February were on the market for an average of 37 days before selling. That's also a big drop from last month where the average days to sell was 51. And I will remind those of you who didn't see last month's update that 51 days on market happened to be like the highest total we'd seen in a really, really long time, years. So what this big drop in days to sell tells me is that we are continuing to see movement in stale inventory, right? So the homes that had been sitting on the market, many of them since last year, they're starting to move again, but also a lot of these fresh new listings that are hitting the market are selling quickly, right? And I fully expect that we'll see days on market continue to trend down in the coming months. Not exactly a bold prediction as we enter spring, but hey, there you have it. Last but not least, on average, homes that sold in February went for 98.4% of their list price. That's up from 97.6% last month. That figure is almost always gonna fall somewhere between 97 and 99% any given month. In a really, really hot market, you might see it climb above 99% and even above 100% in some cases. Like during the peak here, we were seeing 102, 103, 104% sale price to list price ratios in some months. All right, a lot of that, however, was because in those types of red hot markets, many properties are actually underpriced on purpose in order to generate bidding wars. So they set offer dates, the whole thing. And if you're planning on buying this spring, I hate to break it to you, but I think you can expect to see that strategy, that underpricing bidding war strategy, make at least a little bit of a comeback this year. Okay, it might not be every single listing like it was during the peak, but you will see it used more frequently than you have in recent months. We're already starting to see it. And you can also expect more organic bidding wars as well on properties that are just well priced without necessarily being underpriced. All right, so consider yourselves warned. Also, how do you know if a property is well priced or underpriced or overpriced? You hire this guy. All right, that'll do it for Freehold. Let's move on to condos. Before we do that though, I just want to give you a quick word from our sponsors. This month's market update is brought to you by Yoplay's Yup Yogurt Drinks. Yup Yogurt Drinks. Why eat your yogurt like a regular human when you can drink it like a freak? Andrew, have you ever had one of those Yup Yogurt drinks? Yeah. What'd you think of them? They were pretty good. You liked it? Yeah. Oh man, I tried one once and I thought, for me, it was like, it was so gross. It was like this thick liquid. Anyways, not for me. Don't understand why you can't just use a spoon. Maybe the people who run Yoplait got into some kind of feud with Big Spoon at some point. I don't know, but hey, to each their own, I guess. My opinion's not the only one that matters, right? But thank you for the sponsorship, Yoplait. Anyways, let's get back to it. Andrew, let's put the condo stats up on the screen right about now. All right, condos. Let's talk about condos. In February, we sold 249 of them in this beautiful city of Ottawa. That's a massive 48% increase from January. Again, that's not unusual to see the volume go up from Jan to Feb. But it's also about a 14% increase from last February, 2023, where we only sold 218 condos. This February's total, again, that's 249 sales. It's a very regular pre-COVID total. So just like for Freehold, it seems like we're kind of getting back to normal here, sort of, okay? And the reason I say sort of is because I will remind you that in the lead up to COVID, the real estate market in Ottawa was already hotter than it had been in a very long time. Right, COVID just kind of cranked it into a completely different stratosphere. Who would have thought that giving everybody a bunch of free money would cause that to happen, right? Anyways, that's a discussion for another day. I'm going back to condos. The average selling price for a condo in the month of February was $431,000. That's up from $413,000 in January. But if you pay attention to these updates, you already know what I'm about to say here, and that's that in every single month since the start of 2023, the average selling price for a condo has bounced around between about $410,000 and $450K, literally every single month. It finishes somewhere in that range. So 431K, right in the middle of that range, nothing new here, nothing really significant. Having said that, I do expect that we will break through the upper boundary of that range at some point this year. Andrew, agree or disagree?
Agreed.
Andrew agrees. Andrew, if you had to bet on a month, what month do you think we crack past 450 for condos?
April.
Oh, April. So next, that's actually really good. I was going to pick April too. All right, I'm going to take May, Andrew. And if you're right, I'll buy you dinner. And if I'm right, you buy me a Yop yogurt drink. Deal? All right, it's a bet. All right, wrapping up condos here. Again, much like Freehold, condo inventory came way down in February. We started the month at 3.4 months of total inventory. We finished at 2.5 months of inventory. Again, that puts us in a pretty solid seller's market, but you know the drill, oversimplification, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Condos that sold in February, last but not least, I got two more stats. Condos that sold in February were on the market for an average of 44 days before selling. That's still kind of high, but it's down from 54 days in January. Same type of thing we saw with Freehold, where I suspect that the total is a result of a mix of stale units finally getting traction and then some hot new listings moving more quickly. Last but not least now, that's what I get for not sticking to the teleprompter. Last but not least, the list to sale price ratio for condos that sold in February was 97.9%. That's up from 97.4% in January. It's kind of a nothing burger. Who cares? Nothing interesting. It's what you expect it to be. All right. So that does it for the stats. Now, let's talk about a recent news item that caught my eye, shall we? All right. So it was announced recently that the federal government has canceled its first-time home buyer incentive program, or BIP for short. All right. The program was launched in 2019, and it was run through the CMHC, which is the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. The stated goal of the first-time home buyer incentive program at the time was to help young Canadians get into the housing market. Now, first off, I have seen a lot of confusion over this announcement, right? I've had a few people reach out to me and ask, hey, does this mean that first-time buyers can't buy a house with less than a 20% down payment anymore? No, that is not what it means, okay? You can still buy a house with less than 20% down so long as you meet certain criteria, basically that your purchase price is below $1 million and that the house you're buying is meant to be used as a primary residence, right? Your home, as opposed to an investment property. Hey, also contrary to popular belief, you don't actually have to be a first-time buyer to purchase a home with less than 20% down. That option is available to everyone, once again, so long as their purchase qualifies. Okay, so got that out of the way. The program that was canceled, okay, again, it's called the First-Time Home Buyer Incentive Program, was a very specific program where the CMHC would lend you up to 10% of the purchase price of your home, and in exchange, there's always a catch, in exchange, they would take that same amount of equity in your home for the long haul on a percentage basis. So, in other words, they would cover 10% of your purchase price, but then they owned 10% of the home for good, right? And make no mistake, they own 10% of the home, but they weren't helping you with the cost. They weren't helping you with 10% of the cost of future repairs, 10% of property taxes, insurance, utilities, none of that. That was all on you, 100% the homeowner's responsibility. The idea was that once you sold, 10% of the sale price of your home would go back to the CMHC. And if you hadn't sold after 25 years, then you'd have to pay back 10% of the assessed value of your home at that time, as determined by the CMHC. All right, a little bit of a conflict of interest there if you ask me, but hey, that's politics, right? All right, so this first-time home buyer incentive program received a ton of criticism, and honestly, it kind of felt like it was doomed to fail pretty much from the moment it was launched. Seems to be a familiar trend when it comes to housing policy in this country over the last little while, right? Anyway, the most common critiques of the program were that it had these, I don't know why I keep doing this, they had these restrictions that essentially made it so that buyers in the most expensive housing markets, where help is needed the most, couldn't qualify. Right? So in order to access the program, your household income had to be below 150K for Toronto and Vancouver, and then below 120K anywhere else, right? That's household income, so combined income. And you were also limited to a max purchase price of $505,000 in any market. I don't know why they didn't just make it a round number, but hey. So in markets like the GTA, Vancouver, Victoria, Ottawa, Montreal, even Calgary, the program was really hard to access and borderline useless to a first-time buyer, like right from the jump, right? Now, I was also personally very critical of this program when it was first announced. That was, again, back in 2019, before I had this like massive YouTube following of dozens of people, right? So I think I would have posted about it on Facebook or something at the time for my boomer friends. But you know, in addition to everything I just mentioned about the program having these restrictions that made it nearly impossible for the people that needed help the most to actually qualify, the reason that I was personally advising my first-time buyer clients not to touch it with a 10-foot pole or a 20-foot pole or a 100-foot pole or a million-foot pole is because, quite simply, it was a shitty deal. I mean, we could all see where real estate prices were headed in 2019. That's where they were going, right? So, call me cynical, but I've always thought that the feds and the CMHC's real motive for this program was actually just to capitalize on rising house prices, right? They put a positive spin on it, of course. That's always how this works, in case you haven't noticed. And they said that this was meant to, help young Canadians achieve the dream of home ownership. But there are just, to me, so many better ways and more practical ways that we could actually be helping first-time buyers and young buyers get into home ownership. Problem is, they're just not as profitable for the CMHC or the government, right? So when you, as a first-time buyer, or really any type of buyer for that matter, give up 10%, right? Give up a 10% stake in your home, you're not just giving up a sizable chunk of your equity, but you're also giving up a big chunk of any appreciation that home is going to achieve over time, right? And that appreciation can be from updates and upgrades that you might make to the home, or it could just be from the natural passing of time. Again, real estate prices, we've seen what they do over time, right? Again, we all saw where things were going when this was announced. So the way I saw it, the harm that this program was likely going to have on buyers' ability to move up the property ladder in the long run, at least to me, far outweighed whatever benefits it would provide in the short term. And don't have to take my word for it, after about 5 years, the numbers certainly back that up, at least for Ottawa, right? So let's look at some of those numbers. Let's say you had bought a home in Ottawa for $500,000 in 2019 and you financed 10% or $50,000 of that purchase through this first-time home buyer incentive program. Looking at home price index data for the entire city, right, we see that a home purchase for $500K in 2019 would be worth about $775,000 today. So you would have borrowed $50,000 5 years ago, and if you sold your home today, you'd have to pay back about $77,500 to the CMHC. That essentially amounts, not essentially, it amounts to paying exactly 11% per year in interest on your $50,000 loan. Right? Good business if you can get it, right? Banks wish they could charge you that much. And by the way, speaking of banks, in case you were wondering, you could get a fixed mortgage rate in 2019, you could get a fixed mortgage rate in the low to mid threes. So a buyer could have just financed that extra $50K through a traditional lender and paid between, let's say, 3.2 and 3.5% interest instead of the 11% interest they would have wound up paying through the CMHC's first-time buyer incentive program, right? To put it another way, taking that $50,000 first-time home buyer incentive would have reduced your monthly mortgage payment by about $220, but it would have cost you about $460 per month in lost appreciation, or forfeited appreciation to be exact. Andrew, if I said to you, hey, I'll trade you this shiny $220 for your crappy $460, what would you say?
No.
Yeah, so Andrew gets it. Andrew knows how to do math. Good. So, good riddance to the first-time home buyer incentive program as far as I'm concerned. Again, like so many other things we've seen regarding housing policy over the past few years, you could say that unfortunately, at best, the first time home buyer incentive program was an ill-conceived and half-baked idea. And at worst, I've heard from a lot of people who have said they felt it was predatory. All right. Now, just for the record, I'm not quite at that extreme. I personally think that predatory is too strong a term here. Again, just to be clear, but nonetheless, it was definitely a bad deal. And you could see that it was a bad deal from the moment it was announced. We don't want you to get a bad deal. We're here to help you get a good deal, whether you're a buyer, seller, or investor. So if you'd like to chat about your real estate goals, see that segue? Or if you have a few questions about anything real estate related, you can book a discovery call with me at a time that works for you by using the Calendly link in this video's description. All right, now if you click that link and you can't find an available time that works for you, just send me a quick message. I'm at sergepapineau.com and I'll see if I can move some stuff around for you. All right, that'll do it for this month. As always, thank you for watching and we look forward to seeing you next month.